General Zier of the Qian Empire adjusted his shimmering scales and fiddled with his ceremonial gravity dampeners, an entirely unnecessary action, given the Galactic Defense Council chamber was already set to standard universal gravity. But old habits die hard, especially when trying to look dismissive of a species that came from a planet with crushing gravitational forces. "You can't be serious," he said, his secondary breathing chambers expanding with a mockingly amused tone. "These humans want to join our defense alliance? The same species that still relies on combustion engines to break free from their gravity." Around the crystalline chamber, representatives from various advanced civilizations chuckled politely behind their appendages. The chamber itself was a stunning feat of engineering, its transparent walls offering a panoramic view of the nebula beyond, a subtle reminder of the Council's far-reaching power. Dr. Mei Zhou, Earth's representative, sat perfectly composed, her expression unreadable. The only sign of her reaction was the faintest curve of her lips, a smile that had foreshadowed the downfall of many who had underestimated her. "With all due respect, General Zier," she began, her voice calm yet weighted, "I believe you're operating under some outdated assumptions about Earth's capabilities." High Admiral Cax, another kraken with scales so dark they absorbed all light, made a sound that might have been a laugh if it weren't so condescending. "Outdated," he scoffed. "Your species hasn't even figured out how to manipulate quantum fields for personal transport. You're still using wheeled vehicles." And yet, Dr. Zhou responded casually, examining her datapad, "We were able to detect your stealth ships during your last reconnaissance mission, ships you thought were invisible. We even have footage of our children waving at them from their playgrounds." The room fell into an uneasy silence. Several council members shifted in their seats. Zier's scales flickered with irritation. "A lucky coincidence?" he asked. "Your primitive radar systems just happened to pick up some random anomaly?" "We used our so-called primitive systems to track their exact paths and predict their behavior," Dr. Zhou interrupted smoothly. "And, if I recall correctly, we sent your crew some local snacks as a welcome gesture." I heard the commander quite enjoyed the Twinkies. More shifting followed, with a muffled chuckle from the back, quickly masked as a cough. "This is absurd." Zier's gravity dampeners whined as he rose abruptly, his voice tight with frustration. "You expect us to believe that a species that can barely leave its own planet deserves to join the galaxy's elite defenders? You can't even handle low gravity without getting ill." Dr. Zhou's smile widened slightly. "Perhaps we could arrange a demonstration. A test of sorts." "Yes," High Admiral Cax jumped in eagerly. "Let's see your species prove itself through action, not words. Show us what real power looks like." "What do you have in mind?" Dr. Zhou asked, her tone suggesting she'd anticipated this moment entirely. Zier's scales rippled with self-satisfaction. "Since you're so proud of your ability to endure your planet's crushing gravity, let's put it to the test. Your speech says you've mastered your environment. Prove it. Move a mountain." Zier expected gasps, objections, or at least a moment of hesitation. But Dr. Zhou's smile widened into something that would have sent more sensible beings running for their ships. "Move a mountain?" she repeated, typing something into her datapad. "Would you like us to put it back afterward? Or would you prefer we use it for something useful instead?" For the first time in the meeting, Zier felt a tiny spark of doubt deep in his core. He quickly forced it down. "1 week," he stated firmly. "You have 1 week to prove this ability, or Earth's application to the Council will be rejected for the next century." 1 week, Dr. Zhou said, rising and gathering her things. "General, you're underestimating human efficiency. We'll be ready in 3 days. I suggest you prepare your observation team and bring those gravity dampeners. You might need them." As she exited, the council members sat in stunned silence. It wasn't until the doors had closed behind her that Zier realized he'd been holding his breath in all 4 of his breathing chambers. "She's bluffing?" Cax muttered, his scales taking on a faint, uncertain hue. "Of course she is," Zier replied, trying to reassure himself. "After all, they're just a primitive, gravity-bound species. What could they possibly do?" In the distance, Zier could have sworn he heard a faint laugh. Rex Mountain, M. Martinez stood at the base of Mount Kanjunga, watching alien ships descend through the crisp morning sky like metallic snowflakes having an identity crisis. He sipped from his coffee mug, which proudly read, "I move mountains," literally, a gag gift from his engineering team that had, over time, become an eerie prophecy. "They really love pushing that advanced civilization look, don't they?" Rex muttered to Dr. Zhou, who had just arrived by helicopter. The alien ships, with their sleek curves and strange angles, made the human vehicles scattered around the base camp look like toys. "Bet they don't even have cup holders," Rex added. The Himalayan testing ground had undergone a drastic transformation in the past 48 hours. Where pristine snow and ancient rock once stood, there was now an odd mix of human and alien tech, massive massive hydraulic systems and quantum stabilizers scattered like mechanical mushrooms after a radioactive rain. The aliens had set up their monitoring equipment, which resembled overly complicated tripods, full of gadgets that seemed too grandiose for their own good. "Remember the plan, Rex," Dr. Joe said, watching General Zier step out of his ship clad in what looked like a full environmental suit. "They're expecting brute strength. Let's give them a lesson in human ingenuity." Rex nodded, his mind drifting back to 3 years ago, when he first joined the Mountain Move project. Back then, he was just a civil engineer with a bold idea, combining old-school engineering with the latest cutting-edge tech. Most people had laughed at Rex's idea. Even his mother had suggested he try gardening instead. "Start small," she'd said. "Maybe move some potted plants first." But the military had listened, and more importantly, they'd funded it. "Systems check." Dr. Lakshmi Patel, the team's cybernetics lead, called out through the comms, "Rex, time to suit up." The experimental exoskeleton stood nearby like a metallic cocoon awaiting its occupant. Unlike the sleek alien tech, it was intentionally industrial, raw hydraulics and reinforced joints exposed. When the aliens first saw it, they laughed. One of them even called it charmingly primitive. "Time to disappoint some postcards," Rex said with a grin, striding toward the suit as the technicians began the mounting process. The exoskeleton opened up like a flower made of titanium and carbon nanotubes, every piece designed to enhance and amplify human biomechanics. As it enveloped him, Rex reflected on the thousands of hours that had led to this point, the failures, the injuries, the simulations, and the time he'd accidentally punched through a concrete wall and ended up in the cafeteria during Taco Tuesday. "Good times. Your primitive containment device seems unstable," General Zier remarked, his scales flickering with what looked like concern, or perhaps indigestion. "Perhaps a larger safety perimeter would be prudent." Dr. Patel's voice came through the speakers, dripping with sarcasm. "Don't worry, General. We child-proofed it. Although human children are surprisingly durable." The suit's neural interface activated, flooding Rex's mind with a deluge of data. The quantum stabilizers powered on, their field generators creating a network of force lines that made the impossible possible. To the aliens' confusion, the human team had insisted on painting the devices bright pink for visibility, though the grin suggested there was more to it. "Beginning power-up," Rex said, feeling the familiar surge as the suit synchronized with his nervous system. The exoskeleton wasn't just a tool. It was an extension of human potential, amplifying strength through physics and a healthy disregard for the word impossible. High Admiral Kell, who had been scanning the suit with an alien device, suddenly froze. "These readings, this can't be right. It's showing you're channeling enough energy to power a small city." "Oh, that's not the suit," Dr. Joe said cheerfully. "That's just the coffee maker in the break room. We take our caffeine seriously." The suit's diagnostic display lit up, all systems showing as green and stable. The neural interface was secure, the quantum field generators hummed contentedly, and the structural integrity field held firm. Most importantly, the cup holder was working perfectly. Rex took a deep breath, feeling the suit move with him like a second skin. The months of training had paid off. Thought and action aligned seamlessly, with no hesitation or delay. The suit wasn't just a machine. It was a testament to human will, bridging the gap between the impossible and watch this. "Final checks complete," Dr. Patel called out. "All systems are go. Rex, you're in control." The alien observers had moved back, their instruments trained on the suit and the mountain, their gravity dampeners humming uneasily as if aware of the impending breach of the impossible. "I still don't understand," General Zier said, genuine curiosity lacing his voice beneath the usual condescension. "Why build something so obvious? Where are the gravity nullifiers, the mass reduction fields, the quantum displacement arrays?" Rex turned, the suit moving fluidly, surprising even the aliens. "Sometimes, General," the suit rumbled, "the most elegant solution isn't ignoring the rules. It's understanding them so well you can make them work for you." "But it's just mechanics and hydraulics," Cax argued. "Primitive forces." "Perhaps," Dr. Joe said with a sharp smile, "but the universe itself runs on those same forces. We simply learned how to speak their language." Rex ran a final systems check, each movement perfectly synchronized. The quantum stabilizers projected pink force lines across the mountain, outlining the task ahead. "Besides," Rex added as the suit powered up, "who said it's just mechanics and hydraulics?" As Rex moved toward the mountain, even the most skeptical observer had to admit the suit's movements were impressive. The chosen section of Ken Yunga loomed ahead, a massive outcrop of ancient rock that had resisted the passage of time and human ambition. Carefully selected, the semi-detached section weighed roughly 12 million tons, Rex's idea of a warm-up. "Taking bets?" CX asked, turning to the alien observers. "Current odds are 8,000 to 1 against the primitives. Any takers?" He rippled with amusement. "I'll even take Earth currency. I hear they still use physical tokens. How quaint. Dr. Joe walked over, pulling a crumpled bill from her pocket. I'll take that bet, Admiral. $1 With a grin, she held up the bill, already imagining how she'd spend her winnings. The quantum stabilizers hummed to life, casting pink force lines across the rock, wrapping it in geometric precision. Each intersection point glowed slightly brighter, marking the stress nodes where force needed to be perfectly balanced. Initiating geological scan, Rex called out. His suit sensors mapped every crack, fault line, and structural weakness in the mountain. His heads-up display filled with data, density measurements, stress tolerances, and crystalline structures. Think of it as learning the rhythm before attempting a complicated dance move. General Zier's scales flickered, a sign of confusion. Dance? You intend to dance with the mountain? Metaphorically speaking, Dr. Patel interjected over the comm, though I should mention that Rex once tried to waltz with a boulder during a calibration test. The boulder was the lead, Rex replied, his suit's hydraulic systems engaging with a sound like a mechanical whale attempting to play a pipe organ. Each movement was flawlessly calculated, with the quantum stabilizers adjusting in real time to ensure perfect balance. The pink force lines pulsed in sync with the power core's rhythm. Phase 1 stabilization complete, Rex reported. Commencing anchor point establishment. The suit's hands, if you could call them that, extended into the rock face. Molecular bonding fields created connection points stronger than the stone itself, like performing microsurgery on geography. Oh look, one alien observer remarked. It's trying to hug the mountain. Should we tell it that's not how lifting works? Rex ignored them, focusing on the stream of data filling his HUD. The quantum stabilizers created a web of intersecting fields that made the impossible possible, not by defying physics, but by getting it to take a break. They're not even using proper gravity manipulation, KAC sneered. Watching these primitives fumble with basic forces is painful. Speaking of pain, Dr. Joe replied sweetly, didn't your species evolve on a planet with only 1/8 of Earth's gravity? Perhaps you'd like to move back a little further. The air displacement when we start might be uncomfortable. The aliens shifted back a few meters, their gravity dampeners whining in protest. Power systems at 98%, Dr. Patel called out. Quantum field stability is within nominal levels. We're ready when you are, Rex. Rex inhaled deeply, feeling the suit synchronize with his movements like a perfect partner. Starting primary lift in 3, 2, wait, General Zacher shouted. You can't possibly. Then the mountain moved. Not all at once, of course, that would have been crude. Instead, it shifted with the gentleness of an idea forming. The quantum stabilizers pulsed faster, their pink lines glowing brightly enough to be visible in the daylight. Impossible, Cax whispered, his scales draining of color. The energy readings, they're not using any mass reduction or gravity nullifiers. They're actually lifting it. Raw force powered by science. Dr. Patel's voice sounded unervingly cheerful. You know that thing you thought we couldn't understand? The hydraulic systems worked in perfect synchronization with the quantum fields, each enhancing the other. While the hydraulics provided the raw force, the quantum stabilizers ensured it was applied with surgical precision. It was like watching a ballet performed by industrial machinery that had taken a crash course in physics. Structural integrity at 87%. Holding steady, Rex reported, his voice steady despite the mounting strain. The suit's power core hummed louder, not strained, but definitely flexing its muscle. Initiating phase 2 lift. Now the mountain face, 12 million tons of rock, began to rise more clearly. The ancient stone groaned in protest, then seemed to relent, shifting in tandem with the suit's motions. Small avalanches of snow and debris punctuated the hydraulic rhythm like a natural percussion section. Notice, Dr. Joe said to the increasingly pallid alien observers, we're not lifting straight up. The motion follows the natural stress lines of the rock. We're not fighting geology. We're guiding it to dance. But that's not how it's done. Zacher protested weakly. You're supposed to use quantum displacement fields to reduce the mass, then apply gravitic repulsors to, oh, we're using quantum fields, Rex interrupted, grunting as the suit adjusted through a tricky maneuver. Just not the way you expect. Instead of trying to bend physics, we made it our partner. The alien instruments were in disarray, their readings chaotic. One observer even hit their scanner, as though doing so would somehow make the impossible data disappear. Approaching maximum lift height, Dr. Patel called out. All systems stable, though I should mention the coffee maker is running low. The mountain hung suspended now, held in place by a blend of human ingenuity, quantum physics, and sheer audacity. The pink force lines had woven a lattice across the rock, making it appear more like an art installation than a geological feature. Would anyone care to check their instruments? Dr. Joe asked innocently. Perhaps verify the readings? I seem to recall some of you saying our primitive sensors malfunctioned when we detected your stealth ships. The aliens were too stunned to answer. Their scales flickered through a range of colors that could only be described as disbelief. One of them seemed to be trying to reconcile their entire understanding of physics with the sight before them. Another was quietly erasing previous social media posts about Earth's technology. Now then, Rex called out, the suit effortlessly supporting the immense weight. Would you like us to put it back? Or did you have something else in mind? We could always arrange it into a sculpture, maybe a commentary on the nature of assumptions. General Zacher, now relying heavily on his gravity dampeners, finally found his voice. You can put it back. Are you sure? We could spell humans were here across the mountain. Really brighten the place up. Please, Cax said, voice weak. Just put it back. Well, if you insist, Rex replied, starting the careful process of lowering the mountain back into position. Though I should mention, this suit, it's one of our older models. You should see what the new prototype can do. The aliens collectively decided that they didn't need to know about the prototype after all. Sometimes, ignorance really was bliss. As the mountain settled back into place with a quiet, almost smug finality, Dr. Joe strolled over to Cax, her hand extended. I believe that's $8,000 times $1. Or, if you prefer, we can settle it in primitive currency. The sound that came from Cax might have been a whimper, but everyone politely ignored it. As the dust settled around the perfectly restored mountain face, Rex powered down the quantum stabilizers. The pink force lines faded like the tail end of a cosmic light show, leaving behind only the dazed alien delegation and the unmistakable scent of deflated egos. I believe, Dr. Joe said, inspecting her nails with cool detachment, this would be the perfect time for a technical debrief. You wanted to understand how our primitive technology works, didn't you? General Zier's scales had shifted to an odd greenish hue, suggesting his gravity dampeners were the only thing keeping him from losing his breakfast. Yes, please explain. Dr. Patel stepped forward, her tablet in hand and an expression of pure academic excitement. It's actually quite simple. We just had to rewrite a few basic principles of force distribution using quantum fields. Let me show you with some equations. On the tablet, a series of complex formulas appeared, prompting several alien scientists to clutch their sensory organs in distress. One even started hiccuping in binary. You see, Dr. Patel continued cheerfully. Instead of negating gravity or reducing mass, we created a quantum lace that made localized space-time question its own reality. The pink lines weren't just decoration, though I must admit the color was a stroke of genius. They formed a quantum framework of uncertainty that allowed us to, how should I put it in terms you'd grasp? Yes, we made physics negotiate with itself, but the energy requirements alone? Cax sputtered, still reeling. Oh, that, Rex piped up casually, now out of his suit and sipping coffee. We just borrowed a bit of power from the mountain itself. Potential energy is very generous when you ask it politely. The quantum stabilizers worked like extremely courteous loan sharks. The geological impact of their demonstration was minimal by design. The mountain face had been placed back with millimeter accuracy, each layer fitting together like the world's heaviest jigsaw puzzle. A few pebbles shifted, but they had probably been on the verge of moving anyway. If you'll examine the structural integrity readings, Dr. Joe said, pulling up another set of data that made the alien scientists squirm, you'll notice we actually improved the stability of several key formations. Consider it a little thank you gift to the mountain for its cooperation. General Zacher was still struggling to comprehend what had just happened. But you didn't use any standard gravity manipulation techniques? General Zier asked, clearly struggling to understand. Why would we? Dr. Joe replied, her smile radiating with the kind of politeness that could cut through stone. When you grow up on a high-gravity world, as you so charmingly put it, you learn to approach forces a bit differently. We don't fight gravity, General. We've learned to dance with it. The alien delegation huddled together, comparing readings with increasing urgency, occasionally casting nervous glances at the mountain, as though expecting it to do something defiant. Their instruments confirmed what their eyes had already seen. Humans had not only moved a mountain but had done so while appending several fundamental assumptions about what was supposed to be impossible. I believe, Dr. Joe continued, her voice sweet with feigned enthusiasm, enthusiasm, this would be a perfect moment to discuss Earth's application to the Galactic Defense Council. Unless, of course, you'd prefer to see a demonstration with a slightly larger mountain. We did bring the prototype suit just in case. No, came the immediate, panicked response from the aliens. That won't be necessary. General Zier hastily added, your current demonstration has been most enlightening. Are you sure? Dr. Joe interrupted, feigning innocence. There's a lovely peak over there that's been giving us meaningful glances. Please, KAC interjected, his scales shifting colors at a rate that suggested his system was overheating. We are convinced of Earth's capabilities. Rex, still sipping his coffee, grinned. Pity, really. The prototype has cup holders and a sandwich dispenser. The mountain stood in the background, its newly adjusted face glinting in the sunlight with a smug air, almost as if it were aware of its newfound status. In the distance, a few small avalanches rumbled down the slopes, sounding eerily like applause. Well then, Dr. Joe said, casually pulling out a tablet with the council application forms already open. Shall we discuss the terms of Earth's membership? I'm sure you'll find our other technological demonstrations just as entertaining. The word entertaining seemed to physically discomfort several of the alien observers. General Zacher, still reeling from the seismic shift in his worldview, managed a weak nod. Just one small question, he said, his voice shaky. About those stealth ships you detected? Oh, don't worry about those, Dr. Joe replied with a playful wink. We've got a lovely compilation video of them trying to hide behind your moon. The children made it set to classical music. Would you like to see it? At that exact moment, the mountain, wise in the ways of geology and now a seasoned witness to human triumph, released another small avalanche. Its timing was perfect, as if centuries of erosion had been waiting for the exact moment to drop the mic. 1 week later, the Galactic Defense Council chamber buzzed with a level of excitement typically reserved for supernova discoveries or epic space opera premieres. The Kian delegation had replaced their usual ornate gravity dampeners with far sturdier models, just in case. General Zier stood before the council, his scales now permanently shifted to a humbler shade of blue, a reminder of recent events. I move to fast-track Earth's membership application, he declared. Seconded, Cax quickly added, still scanning for any mountains that might have followed them back from Earth. And with added recognition for their unconventional problem-solving methods, Dr. Joe took her seat, exuding an air of helpfulness that made several council members uneasy. Her datapad displayed a continuous feed of Earth's ongoing projects, each more primitive and yet more unsettling than the last. We graciously accept your nomination, she said, her voice carrying the sweet enthusiasm of a black hole describing gravity. And we look forward to sharing other technological advancements with our new allies. For instance, we've been experimenting with something called duct tape. The collective shudder that passed through the alien delegates could probably be felt on seismic sensors. However, Dr. Joe continued, there's one small issue we need to discuss, those trade restrictions on primitive worlds. I believe it's time we update the classification criteria, unless, of course, you'd like another demonstration. I motioned to revise the primitive world classifications. General Zier responded so quickly that it might have broken several council records, and possibly a few laws of physics. All in favor? The vote was unanimous, though several delegates seemed to be voting based on their survival instincts rather than their actual opinions. Wonderful, Dr. Joe said with a bright smile. Oh, and General Zacher, Rex wanted me to pass on that. He's been working on miniaturizing the mountain-moving technology. He's thinking of marketing it as a personal transport device. Would you be interested in being a beta tester? The sound that came from Zacher was immediately classified as a state secret. We, look forward to learning more from Earth's innovative perspectives, he managed, his gravity dampener working overtime to keep him grounded. Your species has demonstrated remarkable creativity in tackling universal challenges. Oh, how kind of you to say, Dr. Joe replied, her smile bright enough to power a small star system. We're just a bunch of primitive humans doing our best. By the way, we've prepared a little gift for the council, a human invention called a joy buzzer. Would anyone like to try it? No one did. As the council session wrapped up, Zacher approached Dr. Joe privately. I must admit, he said with unexpected grace, we may have been too quick to judge human potential. Oh, think nothing of it, she replied. We're quite accustomed to being underestimated. It makes the reveal much more entertaining. Speaking of which, Rex will be giving demonstration tours of our new orbital defense platform next week. He's calling it the mountain that moves itself. Would you like an invitation? Zacher's gravity dampener malfunctioned at that moment, leaving him briefly floating in an undignified manner for a crayon general. Dr. Joe pretended not to notice as Earth's Earth's first official delegation to the Galactic Defense Council left the chamber. In the distance, someone could be heard humming an old human tune about moving mountains. The council archivists would later note that this marked the first time in galactic history that a species had been admitted while simultaneously causing every other member to update their defensive systems. Back on Earth, a certain mountain stood quietly under the stars, its newly adjusted face catching the moonlight just so. And if that face seemed to smile, well, even geology sometimes enjoys a good joke. In a universe full of advanced aliens and impossible technology, who would have guessed that humanity's greatest weapon would be their ability to make the impossible seem effortless, all while delivering excellent comic timing?